Test, 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 test.
The video is live, but you guys aren't on it right now, just so you know. It doesn't. Yeah. But I didn't turn it to you guys yet. It does seem like when we're loud, it is picking up some volume, so.
Hi, Mr. Fogg.
You can, it just will be broadcasted, that's all.
Okay, good.
Oh, she knows. And Taryn's gonna talk loud tonight, right?
That's the goal.
Yeah. Because at home they couldn't hear.
She just came for camp. drink my coffee. Oh my Karen. Well, I'm glad green pens bring joy to you.
Hello. Hey, Tyrone. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Did you wear Tennessee every day?
Not every day, but some days. This is probably one of my favorite sweatshirts.
So, have you thought about going to college there?
I have, but I've kind of narrowed down. Like, I don't want to stay. I don't want to be.
What are you thinking?
Or maybe Susquenita. Far away than up.
Yeah. So not Penn State.
No,
Where my son is just not going. I said that's what you get for going to Penn State.
Yeah, and no Penn State for me. I can't. Dad needs Penn State. I don't like Penn State.
Yeah, my son's a fan. That's like we're one of 47,000 students. My daughter's right. She knows not Penn State. She wants
Yeah.
somewhere small. 4-hour ranges.
Yeah, that's how I'm looking at it now.
Her problem is she's not sure she wants to start.
Yeah.
Well, I said it's really hard, like when you're, when you're like that kind of student that's kind of good at kind of doing anything, but like, she can't decide what direction to go. And it's just no.
Yeah, there's no like undecided.
I think that's probably where we'll end up. We'll start doing some chores.
Yeah.
I hear you guys are talking, so you're doing a presentation tonight on something? Great, what's our topic?
Midterms and finals.
Ah, sounds exciting.
So you guys okay? You're gonna talk loudly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, and talk about the process of
Well, yeah. So
Grind it up. You know how we came about getting the information for like an hour and a half.
in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I'll do the slides. I'm pretty good at recognizing when you want to go, but you feel like I'm not going fast enough, you can kind of look at me or say something. But if you want to offer this, you guys understand, you think.
Probably will sit. Last time we didn't stand at all last time.
We did it,
No.
so, I have it off now, because, are you okay to put it on? And I would just wait until you're totally done, until the next one, and then you can turn it off or mute.
Another question.
Yeah, they'll probably go off. And I feel like that would be on. But it's not. Well, yeah, there's a delay, and it's an odd angle, so.
Where's everyone? This is
It's not out there, it's still with the back.
Okay, I want to call this meeting to order.
Well, good.
Go ahead.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for attending our October caucus meeting, and thank you to all of our guests, to our student reps, and to all of our administrators and everybody joining us via online as well. So before we begin in some of our announcements, I would like to take a moment and on behalf of the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, long-term school directors are being honored across the state by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association at local meetings. School directors are recognized for service up to 8 years and up. Tonight, I am here to honor Phil Lehman, a member of our Susquenita School Board, who received a recognition for 12 years of service. And this evening, he'll be presented on behalf of the Pennsylvania School Boards Association with this certificate of appreciation for being an honor roll school board member of service. So congratulations, Mr. Lehman. Moving along with announcements, it was a great week. I had the opportunity to hold some community coffee events and evenings. And the community coffee, or coffee and conversation, happened on September 28th, and again, just this past Monday. And there was a chance for any community member who was interested to sign up and to pick a time slot and to just engage and to talk and have a conversation, ask any questions that they may want, and just to kind of allow me the chance to meet and greet and take advantage of that time together. So I'm thankful for those who took the time to come out, and for any of those who didn't and it didn't work for your schedule, please know I understand completely. Reach out at any time, and we will also have some other scheduled events happening in early spring or late winter as well to be able to continue to engage. And it's a great pleasure to be able to meet with people in our community and to have those conversations. I do want to also highlight a little bit for an announcement that on our website or webpage you may see that we have a program called Otis, and it's an Otis Platform. Well, this Otis Platform is a placeholder on our website, and it's training that we use. It's an on-demand training. We use it here for our teachers and our staff, and as well as administrators. There's a lot of great resources that are out there, from technology to social emotional learning to just schedules and organization, to anything in terms of digital citizenship. So it's a really great platform. There's a lot of different opportunities out there, and it's available and free. And these sessions are quick. They're about 10 to 12, and I think the longest one might be 45 minutes. But if you register for an account and you can go in and activate any of these sessions, and they're free to utilize. So we wanted to just make sure everybody was aware of what that was on our website and offer the opportunity to certainly participate and to utilize that platform.
A question?
Yes, sir.
Can you, Dr. Fox, can you describe a little bit more in the program? When they go in, what do they do? What do they get trained in?
Sure. And again, there's a lot of different options that they could utilize. So there's options on technology, from anything of how to use Microsoft level programs such as Microsoft Word, to how to utilize Canvas, our learning management system. So they would go in, there's a step-by-step instruction on how to set up an account. Then from there would be a link that they would click on, and it would take them directly to the different program tabs. So it's set up very much like folders. They would go in, parents would be able to filter down, what are you interested in, and select any of those topics of choice to participate in any of those programs. Some have certificates at the end that you could download and print copies of, but it really is, the majority of them are about 10 to 12 minutes. So they're nice quick hitters, and they do a good job, and you can pause it at any time, stop it at any time, and it remembers the place that you left off.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we're going to transition now into some personnel items, looking at our agenda coming up on October the 12th and next week. So taking a look at personnel, we do have 3 resignations to note. We have Monica Haynes from the position of elementary teacher, and we are sad to see Monica leave, but she is leaving to go to a school district that's a little closer to her home. We're sad to see Tiffany Mullen leave our district office, and Tiffany's done a great job with us, and we wish her all the best, and she's going to enter into the medical field, and we wish Tiffany all the best, and she will definitely be missed. We have Sarah Rogers as well, that's leaving us from the cafeteria, and as well as we have a recent retirement, and I think it's noteworthy to recognize the dedication and service of Mrs. Ellen Nelson, who will be retiring as school psychologist in January. And Ellen has been a fabulous school psychologist for us and just a fabulous person to be around. She's upbeat, she's extremely positive, and she's sorely going to be missed. And she's done a great job of working with Dr. Evans and Dr. Herman and our whole team as well, helping us all get up to speed. So we're going to definitely miss Ellen, and I know she's excited about about retirement, and we wish her all the best. And she always has a place here as a Blackhawk, so if she ever wants to come back, she certainly can. Yes, sir.
In the past, we've had difficulty hiring psychologists. Do we have any idea how this is going to go? Maybe we need to get out front quick on this one.
I couldn't agree more on that. We actually are currently right now that position is posted as anticipated, and we are advertising for that, and we understand the same thing that you're saying. So if there's anybody out there that's listening, please put your application in. If you have any questions, reach out to myself, Dr. Herman, or Mrs. Pinson, and we will be more than happy to answer any of those questions. Yes, and we are currently trying to do as much outreach as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have an employment. Right now we are currently have Nicole Ramirez joining us. Nicole is from Hershey, Pennsylvania, and she comes to us by way of California, so from West Coast to East Coast. We're excited to have her. She's an extremely passionate and energetic and just really just a great amount of energy that she's going to bring into the classroom. And she currently has her master's degree, and we'll be welcoming her as soon as possible here, hopefully on October the 13th, Monday. Oh, she'll be joining us. Thank you. She'll be joining us Monday here at the elementary school, so that'll be a good first day for her during our professional learning day to get started and to be able to meet with her teams in grade level. So we're excited to welcome Nicole to our team as well. We have a couple change of status. We have Michaela Brown, change of status from long-term music teacher to our mathematics teacher. She has a minor in mathematics, and she's excited to be joining us. She's done a great job for us already as a long-term substitute music teacher here at the high school. So we'll be welcoming Mrs. Brown formally in that math position that she's currently already in. So we're excited to have her. And Kristen Gutskowski is moving from Bachelor Step 6 to Master's Step 6. We have successful completion of 90-day evaluations for Brianna Valentin as a high-risk aide, as well as looking at some co-curricular assignments that we have here as well. As we continue down through looking at makeup advisor, a shared position with Taylor Reed, a stage crew advisor, for Douglas Young, and again, makeup co-advisor, Taylor Reed, and stage crew advisor for our fall play. And that takes us, at this point, from resignations, leaves, transfers, and employment. Looking at agenda items, if there's no questions on personnel, I will move into agenda items. So agenda items, you're going to see pretty basic here in October as we continue to work through and add to our agenda at this particular time as we go through personnel. We're going to have an update here for career and technical education from Dr. Rubish at this time. And we'll look at some disposition items and some administrative reports. So I also will add any other items as we see fit as we move forward, depending on some discussion items for this evening. Any questions on agenda items before I turn it over to Mrs. Moore for a review of finances? Mrs. Moore?
Okay, good evening, everyone. To start off, I'll kind of start with some shortages. Certainly, we're all aware of the growing shortages associated with not only our school district, but nationally as well. To start with food service, we have apparent supply shortages there as well. Chicken, bread, breakfast items. And to add to not only the supply shortages, they are having issues with driver shortages. So that's kind of adding to the supply shortages as well. So Nutrition Group is trying to mitigate the issue, and they're using a national supplier to help us out with those shortages. So we're trying to, hopefully work through these issues and try to get more items back on the menu when we can. As well as food service, we obviously have transportation that is experiencing driver shortages as well. You may have seen some shifts in trying to, compensate for those absences. We certainly appreciate everyone's patience as we try to navigate through all of these areas. And we're trying to determine the appropriate alternatives that we can to tackle these kind of things. Moving from supply shortages into our budget, we've already started our discussions. I appreciate a lot of team leads have already sent me some big items to start looking at. We spoke on starting with a zero-based budget, removing all kind of large buckets, and to hopefully make everything a little bit more transparent. We'll have a little bit more further details tonight as we go through the budget timeline, along with some more information on our ESSERS 3, which will be coming up shortly as well. The business office is incredibly busy right now. We have fast approaching deadlines. The auditors are on site. They are looking to have everything completed timely so we can go ahead and complete our AFR by the due date of October 30th. All of our final expenditure reports are due as well for our federal programs. We worked with the special ed department to hopefully get everything accomplished for Act 16, and we're going to be moving into our quarterly payroll and tax filings as well. So a lot going on in the business office, but I appreciate everyone's considerations on everything that we're doing, and if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.
Nikki, I just have a question. In regards to the shortages with food services, for some of those items, how is that being communicated out to the parents of children, who may have different food limitations, dietary restrictions due to food allergies, so families can plan appropriately if their children are participating in the free breakfasts, lunches, so forth, so that they can plan appropriately?
I can speak for myself that I should probably be sending out more notifications on those areas as the nutrition group keeps me posted on those type of things, and I can certainly work to make sure to get those notifications sent out. I'm not sure if any on if any.
I know this has come up a couple times at the elementary school because, as you know, young children are especially picky. So when their desired item is out, it causes some of the younger kids especially to, aside from food allergies and more serious issues, they just get upset because the pizza is not available or something like that. So we've been working with the company as well to make sure that those changes are notified. Like, we're notified ahead of time, and if it's a major change, we send it out to the families as soon as we know. That it has been a struggle because sometimes it's a last minute kind of thing that they just don't know about until the truck doesn't come that morning, and they were hoping it would be there. So I know I've met with our nutrition group representatives a few times to try to mitigate some of that and make sure we know ahead of time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Moore. And now transitioning, I'm excited about this next presentation that we have on our discussion items for this particular, for our caucus meeting for October. And to kind of, I would say at this point we have it's a triple approach. We have Mr. Funk kind of leading off, and I'm excited to have Cadence and Taryn also be a part of this presentation. So to kind of just give a little segue and background, what they're going to be talking about is midterms and final exams. Last year, there was a pause and a hiatus. When it came to midterms and finals, they've done a great job of taking some action research, looking at some surveys, talking to peers, talking to teachers, getting feedback and information as well, and working directly with the high school principal, Mr. Funk, to put together a presentation and to share and to showcase what some of those results were, not only on action research, but research in general, and some of the best practices and current information that's out there as well when it comes to the final exams and midterms. So I'm excited to hear. I had a chance to review this a little bit myself, but I'm going to turn it over now, Mr. Funk.
Thank you very much. As Dr. Fox said, the purpose of this presentation is just to continue to provide the board with information, as last year there was a moratorium on finals and midterms, and that was received very well. So we wanted to see whether that's a direction we want to continue moving forward or return to the traditional midterms and finals. And so we collected data over the last month or so and wanted to share that with you at this time. Just to share some of the current assessments and past incentives, on the screen listed are some of the current larger standardized testing that our students will participate in throughout high school. That ranging from all students will take the Keystones, the NOXDs, the Career Technical Center. The citizenship exam is one of the new requirements that students will be taking. College and the high school and AP courses will still have midterms and finals as appropriate. AP testing, and this year we're doing a more widespread with the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, because it provides a really good career and technology data for you. It doesn't necessarily mean military, but it'll be good for our students. One of the last incentives that the PAC team brought to the school board several years ago was a way to recognize students for earning an A, I guess a 93 throughout the year, and students who did score 93 in a class before the finals were exempt from the finals. And that made a big push to some students who were maybe like at a 90. If they could get a couple more, they would not have to take finals. So that was a past incentive before the pandemic hit. So what we did is collect data from teachers and also from students. And so I just wanted to share the slides of these data points. We had about 30 responses out of the teachers, so it's a pretty good response. Prior to the 2021 school year, did you utilize midterms and finals in all your classes? And it's fairly evenly split, 43 to 53. That's about as close as we're going to see together of who did use finals and midterms, because several, you have electives that may not use midterms or finals, so it all depends on the individual course. The next question, how effectively do you think midterms and finals assess student understanding? And you see 13% was very effective, somewhat was 60%, and not effective was 26%. And then the golden question is, should we continue to use midterms and final at the high school as the primary method for summative student assessment? And you see, yes is 16%, which is low considering the teachers that took this. 43 said no, and 40 were unsure, meaning, well, they could see that some students wouldn't benefit, some students might benefit from, but they just weren't making a decision either way. But majority there do not think that the standard traditional exams were effective as a primary method of assessment. So once we had the teacher data, I did not share that with the students. We sent a survey, a simple few question survey to the entire student body. I will turn this over to the students because this is all them. We discussed this over about an hour and a half of principal advisory committee meetings. And so Cadence and Taryn are going to share this data and some additional thoughts.
Okay, so we'll take over the student survey data. And as you can see, there is 327 responses, which is a giant leap from the 30 teachers that we got info back from. So the first question on this survey for the students was, do you feel traditional midterm and final exams effectively measure the information you learned in class? And as you can see, the big red section, a lot of the kids said no, 63.6%. 28.7 said maybe, and a slim 7.6 said yes. And
our second question from our survey was, should we continue to use midterms and final exams at the high school? A whopping 74% of the students said no. 17.7% of the students said maybe, and a small chunk, 8.3% of the students said yes. So there's an overwhelming majority here of the student opinion.
And then for the last question on the survey for the students, we got 324 responses. And if we eliminate midterms and final exams, is there a better form of assessment that we should use? So this is basically saying, so if we get rid of the tests, should we still keep the concept of a midterm or a final? And 55.6% of kids said no. But there was a increase on the amount of kids who did say yes to this question. And then I'll turn it over to Taryn.
So, both of us have heard quite a few comments from students and teachers. I will happily share a few of those. Multiple students mentioned that maybe instead of having a midterm or a final, would do like an activity throughout the year, maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4, that kind of shows that they are learning the material and that they can demonstrate the ability to show that they know the material. Quite a few students in our PAC meeting mentioned having just a final project. Mr. Shepler, one of the teachers at the high school, had our A-Push class do like a final project last year. And it kind of, he asked us to encapsulate basically what we learned throughout the entire year and put it into one project, which personally I enjoyed it, and I know a bunch of other kids in my class did as well. Some students, even though it's a minority, some students still want finals. I guess to kind of, yeah. But the general consensus was that we should eliminate midterms and finals. But the point was mentioned that what about kids who maybe go to VOTEC or who aren't going to college? Like, should we still have a final for them, or is it fair to still make them do a final when they aren't going to college? Get out my magic notebook here. Yeah, teachers and students have expressed that projects would be a good alternative. The point of a final project instead of a midterm or final was brought up by quite a few people, and it seemed to be a popular idea. Yeah, but I believe we kind of talked about that we should let teachers have the final say of whether they want to do a final or a project or any other sort of idea. So that's also an option. So some teachers may still choose to do finals, but some teachers may choose to go the alternate route of a project or any other idea.
So, over the summer, this concept was brought up to me by Mr. Funk, and I speak for all students, not just myself. So I did put something out on Snapchat where any student who willingly wanted to put their input out could respond to me. And there was an overwhelming amount of kids who did respond with giant paragraphs of their own free will. So a lot of kids feel very passionately about this subject, and a lot of people believe that not everybody is a good test taker, and a lot of people, and like students, just simply like cannot take a test well. So it doesn't really measure how teachers teach or what the kids are absorbing. And it was just the number of people who really did respond of their own free will with sentences upon sentences, especially over the summer when kids are mentally checked out, it was overwhelming. And on a personal level, I've never taken a final. Junior or freshman forward, I always got like a 93% or higher. So that incentive is very good to have. It kept me going. But if we could critique that to something that if kids did have to take a midterm or a final, where it could be more applicable. And especially for this year being a senior, it's a different perspective. And when a senior takes a final, that information is supposed to be to assist the teachers in their teaching styles, what can help them, what can make kids learn more. But if a senior takes a final, they are leaving very soon. So that information is just not used very well. And that's bringing me to my next point. Taryn talked about projects or teachers, all of that being up to the teachers, but the possibility of throughout the year assessments, especially for seniors who take full year courses, it would definitely be have a bigger impact on the students and assist them as well as the teachers. And then, like Taryn said, the overall consensus is a lot of kids believe that we should do away with finals, whether that be for personal gain or just in general. And an alternate form of assessment is definitely needed. And that is all. I'll turn it over to Mr. Funk.
Thank you. Very nice job, ladies. So you can see this has been some work put in on the students' behalf, especially on getting information to share to the board just as a recommendation. Looking at the calendar this year, something we also noticed when we were talking about finals in the final week, and on the calendar, I listed the highlights in May. And you see AP testing starts May 2nd to the 13th. Then Keystones go from the 16th to the 27th, and the last student day is the 26th. So realistically, about the only week, finals would have to take place probably final week around the 9th of May, which would mean review for finals would be taking place at the end of April this year. So the calendar, that's sort of when we were looking at this and discussing as students, May's a pretty packed month with all sorts of other testing in the end of the school year, and there was concern about throwing in finals just to have finals this year. So I wanted to share that information with the board. So we tried to find information around the area and maybe nationally about the traditional paper, pencil, or online test exams. Some of the data that had been shared is that just Harvard has been slowly phasing out mandatory finals. Just some numbers up there. And the data is a little old, but there's a lot of information not quite out there yet. My counselors reached out to some local state universities just to try to see what they do. And they said a lot of individual and course instructors, some schools do, not necessarily a school-wide mandate. 4 of the state universities offer some form of culminating project, not necessarily a blue book test or a final like we'd probably been experienced with. I emailed the high school principals, and it's a very busy time of the year, so I heard back from 4. And 2 have eliminated finals and midterms over the years, and 2 are still offering the exams, and they've talked about it before. We found a little bit of information. Dr. Collins, who came here and presented to us on Teacher In-Service Day, part of Collins' writings, very well-educated man that we're having back, hopefully, to work with the teachers. And he sent this to us after we'd asked him the question, and he followed up about ongoing assessments are more beneficial than a final exam at the end of the course. So we appreciate Dr. Collins sharing that with us.
Is this open for discussion? Or no, are you done? Are you guys done?
I think I have one more slide.
Oh, sorry. I thought there was a pause there. I thought maybe.
I was giving nods, but I think my view was obstructed. Sorry. You're doing a great job, Mrs. Matash. Thank you. So based on the student and teacher data and what we've experienced, what our recommendation would be is to eliminate the traditional midterms and final exams. And then during this year, work with teachers and student feedback to develop what sort of alternative methods we can assess student progress throughout the year, and then start implementing those in future years. Midterms and finals would still be required, or may still be required in college and the high school and AP courses. So, because those are deemed by the college as what we must do. So now I'm finished there.
I was just going to add, maybe for the benefit of some people on the board that may not have kids in the high school, that previous to our doing midterms and finals, the midterm is weighted at 6% of the final grade of the student. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mr. Funk, if I screw this up. But so it's not 6% of your second quarter grade, it's the 6% of your total grade, and your final is 6% of your total grade. So as Cadence was mentioning about getting out of the final exam, up until that determination is made, the midterm is counted at 12% because there's no grade put in for the final yet. So that one test can weight in a student's grade 12% pretty heavily for those kids, like you said, that have a hard time testing, just for one day, and then having multiple of them over a course of 4-day period can really take a toll on a kid's grade. I think I can anecdotally tell you it happened with my one child, my first one, my youngest one hasn't had finals yet. I think Rob mentioned it as well. So I think that is just one other piece for those on the board that may not have high schoolers that understand how they are weighted. So in light of that, I think if there is a project, I wouldn't like that to be weighted as 6%. I think maybe it can be included in the fourth quarter grade or something like that. That would be a way to assess, if that makes sense.
And Mrs. Singley, I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't mention this. One of the discussions was the culminating project or activity. That would just be included. It would not be a separate category in PowerSchool. Whatever assessments would be just counted in with the 4-quarter grades.
Yeah, okay.
I just want to thank all three of you and anyone else that was involved with putting this together. Great job. Thank you for including the students and getting other student inputs, and I thought it was fabulous. The one thing that I thought was interesting, looking at it from statistics and everything, is the amount of yeses that the students got with that number of students, because with that number of students, it means that you asked more than just seniors. And if you think about it, other than kids that are taking college in the high school, only seniors have taken midterms or finals in our school because of the pandemic and everything. The juniors had a midterm their freshman year, but we got out of school in March, so they did not have a final. So I kind of think it's funny, to me, that yes is a little high because, only about a third of those students. So I find that interesting. It may just be because that's what they're comfortable with. I agree with your recommendation. The only thing that I would ask is if either teachers decide to keep a midterm or a final, or the college and the high school ones, if maybe you try to work with the teachers to come up with a plan. Okay, we have to have a final for this course because it's AP history. What does that look like? When are we going to, what I would like to see is not only just, we're having them take a final, but what, if they need to take finals in high school, how can we help them to make them better at finals once they get to college? Do we work with the students maybe like that last quarter of how you study for a cumulative test, and things like that? Do we work with other teachers that maybe have students that same grade level, that we're like, okay, these last couple weeks of school, you can't do any big projects because they have finals, something like that. But even if there would be a way that we could not just have the students take a final, but teach them what it's like to study for a final versus just a quiz that you take throughout the year type thing.
And that's something when talking with the teachers, and one thing they mentioned is, yes, if we did away with midterms and finals, that does not mean we're doing away with how to properly take a test or complete an assessment. Those are two separate entities we see as educators. So yes, students will still be receiving how to proper test taking skills, but just not for that one specific entity.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also wanted to echo, I just appreciate the work you put into it, and I totally support your recommendation. Couple thoughts. I always was a fan. I always thought, finals, midterms, more homework equals rigor. And I've grown over the years to realize that's not true. And there's something to be said about authentic assessment and authentic learning. But, the only reason I've heard in recent years, because I've changed my mind on this a while ago, but the only reason I've heard in recent years to give midterms and finals was to prepare kids for college. But if indeed that's the theory, then I don't think we should let kids get out of a midterm and final by earning a 95% in the class. Because as we heard, our college-bound kids don't take midterms and finals because they're getting all A's. And it also, it makes it seem like it's punitive. A midterm and a final is punitive. So if you get high enough, then you get out of it. If we really think it's an authentic project, everyone should be doing it because we're measuring and we're assessing their ability. But I don't think taking a midterm or final prepares you for college, if that's the case. But anyway, great job. I would totally support your recommendation.
May I submit a different point of view? I never went to college. The only talent I have in school is I take tests very well. It got me a job with the post office. It got me a job with the census. It got me a job with the government. It got me a job because they all give tests to get employment. And I'm sure there's a lot of other jobs out that do that. So I kind of go for but I'm old. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I think to your point, though, from your first slide, there are still quite a few tests that are being given, be the NOCTI or the ASVAB, or that are testing that students do have the ability to take and get used to that sort of thing before they move out into the workforce. Yeah, I'm sorry, there it is up there, yeah.
I'm sorry. Are all students required to take those other tests?
The Keystone test is mandated, and that's all the students in the high school. It's sort of going to be a graduation requirement, we're told. The Act 35 citizenship exam is now a requirement also, yes. So those are two main ones. This year, we're rolling out ASVAB tests. So starting this year, moving forward, all students will have a chance to take that before graduation. That's 10th grade, I believe, this year.
Okay.
So.
And I just have one other question about your recommendation. So when you have down that AP tests or midterms and finals may be required in college and the high school /AP, are you only really referring to college and the high school classes because those college curriculums require them for you to get that credit from that school?
Mainly, yes. I know some AP courses have some checks, I guess, assessments that teachers utilize, and they call those, well, this is our midterm. So I didn't want to get into the semantics and say, well, AP's fully excluded, because it could come down to the individual one. But the college and the high school, since the curriculum and the assessments it's our curriculum approved, but they're mandated to give a final exam at the class for the credit.
And that, again, would only be part of the fourth quarter grade or part of the second quarter grade?
Yeah,
You're not
that's
going to
a
carve that
separate-
out in that 6%?
No, it
carved
does not
thing.
count separately. It's included into that.
Okay.
And have you looked at any aggregate data to see how many kids' grades improve because of midterms and finals versus how many kids' grades over this whole year are actually worse because of it? Just in aggregate, like if you took every kid, like say that graduated last year, their sophomore year, and just did an aggregate, was it a net gain or a net negative?
I guess it would, I don't have specific to say, well, I see a net gain. I think it comes down to whether the students need the finals to pass to graduate, or if they can not take the final, get a 0, and still pass the class. So they're not going to get very accurate data because it comes down to, some of them will just take it, and they've already passed the class, they've done the math, so however they do. Where you have the other high achievers that, well, I want to do very well on this, and they might see a point growth or something like that. The finals we found more were weighing on those students who were very close to making it or not making it and impacting their determination, as opposed to those students who were the solid ones. So I don't have a direct answer for you. It's more of just what we've seen in past.
Just anecdotally, I know a lot of kids were very frustrated because they'd have a 92, so they had to take it, and then they were a 92 student that got a 70 on their midterm or final, and it just tanked their grade for the whole year. So
Because it was weighted so heavy.
Because it was weighted so heavy.
It was,
Yeah.
that's significant.
And I would argue if they were able to get a 92 and they got a 70 on that midterm, that or whatever, that's probably not a very authentic form of assessment.
Or they're not doing it.
Or they're not, what do you mean?
Students don't study here for finals.
I can tell you my student did, and it happened to him, and I know it's happened to others too.
If
These are
we're truly
NHS kids
talking-
that get good grades.
I mean, if we're, theoretically speaking, they should be retaining it. if you crunch it into your head for one night's test in order to pass it, and if you don't, and you can only get a 70, then maybe we should be spending more time doing authentic forms of learning that they retain, as opposed to, being able to pass a 500 question multiple choice midterm. I think it's all about the philosophy of what we want our kids to be able to learn and do.
Absolutely. And I think, too, that I think what happened during midterms particularly is you have 5 classes, and they're being done over the course of 2 days, and they're trying to do cumulative learning of all of that material. And many times in ease of grading all of that, they are these multiple choice tests that even the math might be just a multiple choice test. So it can be a perfect storm to cause problems for somebody it's not, I think to your point, it's not reflective of what they know in the class oftentimes.
So thank you, everybody, for all of the hard work. So I don't disagree that not everyone is a good test taker, certainly, having had that experience. So has there ever been any look at changing the weight? I don't disagree that, you have to have authentic, assessment and authentic education, but the thing that I keep hearing is that this midterm and these final exams are weighted so heavily. It's 6% of the total grade or 12% of the total grade. And I think no matter how you teach it, you still have to have a way of measuring whether what you're teaching is actually being learned, and whether it's an exam throughout or whether it's a midterm, cumulative exam. But what I am hearing is that how it's being weighted seems to be very unfair. So my first question is, has any thought ever been, given to changing how that's weighted and putting more weight onto some of those more authentic learning experiences in the class?
In 2019, we started to have discussions based on the previous May of 19's finals and concerns and weights and midterms. And so we did start to have discussions. Then the pandemic hit and there were no finals for the 19-20 school year. Last year, they were waived totally. So instead of returning to the weighting, it was more like, well, can we just move ahead even and look at more authentic assessments throughout without separating them to this percentage midterm, this percentage final. So there had been discussions starting, but then once they were eliminated and then didn't have them, it's like, well, this is one of those times where let's take a whole new look.
And Mr. Funk, that's kind of how they were done last year for your college and the high school finals. They weren't weighted, were they?
Oh, no, the college and high school finals were not weighted separately. They were just for those students who had to take them.
Because that would have been the only finals that we had last year.
Correct. And they were actually weighted and they were just calculated as part of a final grade to report to the college.
Okay.
So
And
sorry, go ahead.
So the other thing that I have is I think the final project sounds great, but then the thing that I start to think of is that if a high school student has, we're going to say 6 different classes, and now 6 different teachers are requiring a final project, has any thought been given to there's just as much requirement, if not more, in how I'm going to put together a final project? Having had a nephew who has now graduated and is in his 30s and had to do a final project, and his final project was a year-long cumulative final project. And that required a lot of time and energy. And so if we're now going to have 6 teachers requiring that, we're actually asking for more of the students, more time, more energy, more effort, times 6. And this was, his final project was for 1 class. So I'm just concerned about, while a final project sounds great and it's not a midterm or a final exam, there's potentially a whole lot more on what's setting the standard for this, to be looking at. I think it's great. I think it's a whole lot that isn't being considered as to the demand that it's potentially putting on the students. If the students are willing to take that, great.
No, you made a very valid point. That's something we did discuss and a concern that, of course, like, oh, let's do a project. Well, then we're right back to where finals were, where we're taking 5 finals in 2 days. Well, now you have 6 projects in the same time. So I think we use the term project very interchangeably. as like a fill-in word at times, where that could be one option. I think the goal would be to work with teachers, think what sort of authentic assessments can you utilize? So maybe there isn't a final project for all classes. Maybe like Mr. Shepler will do his project, but math might do something totally different. That would have to be something that, well, oversight and working with teachers, that we can't have 6 different projects due by the last day of school. So I think there are so many other forms to assess student growth than just a culminating project.
And one thing you said, which in your presentation, which I respected, is taking this year to work with teachers on what that looks like. It doesn't have to be a long project. It could be just something, if you look at Webb's depth of knowledge or Bloom's, and look at higher levels of thinking. So you look at a small project that requires the application of, or the synthesis of what they've learned during the year. So instead of just recalling information, you're applying what you learned. It could be a very small, it really could be a very small project that just shows that you can apply the content. I don't see it as, again, I think sometimes we get stuck in length and bigger, meaning deeper or more rigorous. And that's why I think it's important what you said. Work with the teachers, teaching them the difference, because it could be very simple.
Well, and Dr. Fox and Mrs. Singley, it could be once this year is done, when you've done all of your work, if you feel that you have a good answer at the end, it may be something that we want to look at as either a policy or something where we have kind of like a limit on it, similar to like our homework policy, where each grade, you can only do so many minutes or hours of homework each night. There may be, just because, as much as we would like you to be here forever, Craig, you probably won't. So we don't want the next person to come in and see project and think kind of like how Marcy did of, oh, this needs to be, a 50-page report. We kind of put a limit on, so we don't have students that are, having to do 6 projects and they're overwhelmed then.
At last. As the person in this room who's probably had more to deal with this than anybody else over the years, I can say the reason we started having the finals in the first place way back when was because it was thought when the students went to college they weren't be prepared for them. So that's why they were implemented in the first place. Before I forget, I want to say congratulations to Mr. Funk on implementing the ASVAB for everybody. I think it's a terrific idea. But back to the original point about taking them because they have finals in college. Now we have all these other tests that are going on. And I think that kind of wipes out the need to have this. On the percentage, the problem with it, contrary to what Mrs. Singley and Mr. Carmo think, the problem is that it's only worth 6%. It doesn't change people's grades much depending on when they do that, okay? My base is, I've been here 32 years, and for 32 years in May, I would go over kids' schedules and say, this is what you need to pass on the final exam in the 4th quarter to pass your course. Most kids, I didn't have to say that to because they already passed. So for most people, it doesn't make a difference. Either do away with it or make it worth more, one of the two, one extreme or the other. Projects, our projects sound good in concept, but I can't help but think back when we had the graduation project here, and that was just an absolute disaster. And I think it was a disaster throughout the state. That's why they did with it. We would meet once a quarter. I would meet with my students. I would meet with them. What did you do in the last 9 weeks? Nothing. 9 weeks later, what did you do in the last 9 weeks? Nothing. And the teachers hated it, the kids hated it, and they did away with it. Now, if you're going to implement the project during the course of the school year, then the problem I have with that, it takes away from other instructional time, things that they would be doing, because you're working on the project. So you don't like that, that's not a good idea either. So I don't know that the project idea fits. Maybe, I'm not seeing it right now.
Can I just chime in on what you just said about
Sure.
project while you're looking?
Yeah.
I agree, and I think at some point we have to train our teachers and allow them to be professionals and allow them to say, this is my content, these are the academic standards, this is what I want them to know and be able to do at the end of the course, period. And it doesn't have to be some trumped-up project or some trumped-up whatever. It's got to be authentic and trust their professional judgment. Write it in the course description, write it in the curriculum, boom. And I think at some point we have to trust them to do that, because otherwise we're making them jump through hoops. I was surprised at the data that said how many were giving midterms and finals, because I thought they were all required to give midterms and finals. And then obviously they weren't, but I know some of those are electives.
Yeah.
But I think at some point we just need to trust the professionalism of our teachers, train them, give them the training that they need, and let them make some decisions.
Yeah, Dr. Jones, I think that's what I thought too when I saw that so many were not giving finals, and I thought, well, that must be the elective courses that they're not giving them in. Okay, and I think you're right. This teachers are given the freedom to design their own projects, yes, but like when we had a graduation project, you will do this. Well, that doesn't go over with anybody, either students or teachers.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Do teachers still give tests during the year? Okay, say once a week, once every other week, once a month? Why not take those scores and combine them and use them as the finals for the assessment or whatever? I'm sorry, I might be totally out of it on that.
No, thank you.
I would just also, just on the dovetailing on the project thing, you know, it doesn't, none of these courses are one size fits all, right? So I think that's where the project, saying that every class is going to have a project, it doesn't seem like it would fit, because they're not all the same kind of class. And so, like Dr. Jones, Dr. Bush were both saying, I think it's useful to allow the teachers to be able to frame their course in a way that meets, that they're making certain that the kids are meeting the standards of the course. And the AP classes, I think most of those have already built in a lot of this build-up framework, because the kids are preparing for the AP exam. So they, you know, the teachers are already doing that along the way with these assessments to get them ready for those style of questions. So, but again, they're not, that's not gonna be the same as another class. So I would like the idea of not saying, yeah, we have to have a project, but that there would be some way that the teachers would have that flexibility within their own class.
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is very much like Dr. Jones said, and I think it's the consensus amongst the board here, is to allow for that teacher autonomy. And I think, again, the idea of, and I think both of you said it very well, it's about, an assessment is about making those instructional adjustments throughout the course of the year to be able to meet the needs of the students. An assessment is a demonstration, right? A student should be able to demonstrate their knowledge and skills. And Taryn, you hit the home run when you said that exactly. To me, that's what an assessment authentically is. How can you demonstrate that knowledge and use that knowledge? And to me, that's where we're going in the 21st century as well. Taryn and Candace, you demonstrated that tonight, right? You demonstrated that in your presentation, where you took the time and you did a poll. You took the time to stand up and to speak and to prepare and to ask and be ready for questions and question and answer. To me, that's a demonstration of knowledge. That's an assessment. And that right then in itself is going to prepare you for college and career readiness, because right there is a full assessment. And you, I'm sure, learned a lot more about final exams and midterms than you ever wanted to prepare for this evening, and doing that research and reviewing and reading over comments from students and reading over comments and data and poring over that and working in a small group, a principal's advisory committee, where I'm sure there's a plethora of different personalities and a plethora of different voices and opinions to formulate a response, in which time you're here as a collective group to present that information. So I think, to me, that's what it's all about right here. This is a small example of what a good assessment, in my opinion, an authentic assessment looks like. So thank you.
Can I also chime in real quick? What Dr. Jones talked about trusting the teachers. I am taking physics and AP calculus with Mrs. Falzerano, and throughout the year, we've had multiple projects for both classes, AP calculus, math, and a science course. And she had us do a podcast for math where we had to verbalize what we were learning, and then for physics, we just finished another project, and it's at the end of each chapter. And I'm just gonna say, personally, it made the curriculum, like what we went over, stick and a little bit more memorable because it was so different. And it's not like she's weighting one project as like a final grade or whatever, but sprinkling these throughout the year where students can be more creative and have a little bit more freedom is definitely profitable.
Yeah, I'll throw in my 2 cents. I would say, obviously, being able to retain and recall information that you learn is very important. But I don't know about everybody else, but I can probably sit here and tell you I've probably forgot more of what I learned in high school than I remember. And honestly, we do live in the information age where all the answers are, right here at your fingertips all the time. And a large part of what we need to be teaching and helping them retain is not recalling the answers right off the top of your head, because you're never going to have all the answers, but being able to use the resources at your disposal to be able to find them. And that's not, in my opinion, sitting down and cramming through this book for 2 8-hour sessions and then trying to take a test at the end or the next day. Do I feel that the students should be the ones, based off of the statistics in the survey, to make the decision if we get rid of the exams? Of course I don't, personally, because I have children and I know they would say no test, no homework, all that stuff. But I understand all of it, and all of that is how I feel about this.
I'll tell you, Mr. Funk, I look forward to hearing more of what, like the end of this year or whenever you're complete with your teachers, because I do think that I hope most of them are excited about it. Like if they can eliminate that time, that they need to, prepare for the final and take the final and everything, especially for a class where they don't still need to, to study for it and stuff if it's not a college and the high school. And, like what with Cadis. I knew I was messing it up. I just didn't know the right one. Sorry for that. They don't all have to be, the same. They could be something where, they're going to do something once a quarter, and that's how they're going to show the accumulation, or they're going to do a final project, or they don't have to do a project at all. I just am excited that they can kind of make their class a little more their own instead of knowing that they're kind of teaching towards a final. So I think that I'm hopeful that people are excited about that.
Thank you, Cadence. Thank you, Taryn. And thank you, Mr. Funk, for that great information and that great presentation. And once again, that authentic assessment that you did. So we appreciate that, and a great demonstration. At this time, we're going to transition, and Mrs. Moore and I are going to talk a little bit about a budget timeline. And we thought it was imperative right now, and here we are, right, October, and we're going to talk budget because things are going to gear up pretty quickly for us. And Mrs. Moore has done a great job, and she's already started those conversations with us as an administrative team of working through and talking about what some of our overall expectations are going to be as we work together collaboratively as a group and as a team to foster and create a sustainable budget that really is our first one together. So I'm excited about this process and excited about learning more and unpacking and building and constructing and unpacking. So I'm going to turn it over a little bit to Mrs. Moore to get us started.
Thank you so much, and that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you guys very much. So like Dr. Fox was saying, we've already kind of started the conversations. I have a little bit of an idea from you all what you're looking for this year, and I hope to further those conversations and to have you guys be fully open with me on your expectations as we go through this process. Normally, we don't start the timeline and the presentation of the timeline until after Christmas, so I am definitely glad to be doing this so early so we can certainly get ahead of things. In October, obviously, we're presenting the timeline to you, and then we have already began the preliminary discussions with the department heads, like I spoke of before, and just kind of being transparent on expectations and needs. And I've already had some great conversations. I know Ms. Matash has sent out some surveys already about budget items. I know buildings and grounds, as well as our athletics are already sending over things to me as well. So we're kind of really moving forward at this point. And then I would also like to continue conversations with you all, the board, on your desired format and information that you are looking for going into this process. In November, I will begin distributing templates to our department leads. I know in the past they received a particular template, and I would like to get those out earlier so we can, get them back and have conversations one-on-one with each other on the items that are listed there. So again, we're going to continue the open discussions with both team leads, with everyone in the business office, as well as you all. So I hope we can, if you have questions or concerns, please email me, call me, whatever we need to do so we can make sure that this process goes a lot smoother this year. In December, I will get back, hopefully before we leave for Christmas break, I can get the working budget templates back from our department leads and begin working on that preliminary budget line items, as well as the presentation that you guys would be interested in viewing before we give the budget presentation, and then continue, our open discussions with everyone involved. In January is where we'll have our individual basis discussions with light items and requests, just so that I'm fully aware of the requests that are being submitted, rather than just speaking on what is sent to me. I really want to have full understanding for everything that is going through the costs and actions that are needed there. And then obviously I will continue updating that preliminary budget based on the presentations that you're looking for, whether it's a cost analysis based on previous year, based on previous budget, whatever we are looking at, and the expectation, and being able to have those conversations that are very important.
Thank you. I think that's a great point when we talk about being able to, we want to highlight some of the main new items that may be in the budget for this year, and be able to put those at the forefront and have a conversation as to what that is and the why behind it, and showcase that right up front and very clearly, and what implication that has. If we didn't have that in the budget, what implication would that have overall on the impact for our students and for our district? Thank you.
So as I go further into the presentation, there is a timeline that's mandated by Act 1 for the preparation of the preliminary and final general fund budgets. I am still waiting on the actual timeline with specific dates from PDE, but there's a general expectation for particular months that I will go forward right now. So in January, we will have to adopt a resolution to limit the tax increase to the Act 1 index, or we will have to have a proposed preliminary budget uploaded. The Act 1 index is still, I haven't gotten the final, last year we were at 4%, and I believe we'll be at 4.4%, but I can't say for finality until I get that PDE timeline. In March, I will be giving the budget presentation to the board and the public. And then in May, we will need to adopt that proposed final budget, as well as place it for 20-day public review. And then in June, we need to adopt that final budget. And then I will need to, before July 15th, I will make sure it is submitted to the 2028 to PDE for their final review. So at this point, budget discussions will continue on a monthly basis, and I would like to, at every caucus, have this be an item that we continue to discuss, so I can be fully aware of what you guys are looking for, so I can begin creating the information that you would like to see starting now. And our plan at this point is to continue. For the past 15 years, we've had 0% tax increase. So at this point, we're going to continue to plan for that 0% unless there's any further complications that arise and you decide that we need to revisit that percentage. So is there any questions at this point?
Thank you, Nikki. I just have two things I'd just like to see kind of going forward. One, if we could do especially because of my region, well, in Region 3's region, because we have Reed Township, if we could maybe, since we now have these caucus meetings, do kind of a presentation on the comparison of the taxes for the different areas. We usually do that as part of the budget, but it's kind of like thrown into the whole thing. Maybe, you know, you and Dr. Fox could talk on, maybe we could do a little more on that at one of the caucuses. And I would be interested, you know, and the board has time to decide how they want the budgets to be given to us. I would like it to be done as a Google Doc or some sort of document that we can use on our iPads, that we could put our questions in, and then as people answer them, whether it be Dr. Fox or, you know, Christine's answering a question, it's live so everyone can see it, so we don't have, you know, 6 of us asking the same questions. However, as I say that, I would like a refresher, if we could set up some kind of school board refresher on how to use Google Docs. But I think that that would be like the most cost-effective way for us to review the budget, is to do it on our iPads.
Thank you.
I would like paper.
Absolutely. We'll kind of, just as we talk about learning styles, we all have different learning styles, and we all have different ways, honestly, that we have preferences, and we'll be able to certainly adhere to that and have those. We'll you know, certainly make that happen, because the most important thing is that we all have the information and all can have those discussions. And Mrs. Moore, thank you for a great presentation and kind of outlining the steps moving forward. And I do want to highlight that while we are going to continue to work and operate with a 0% budget is the ultimate goal, that is, of course, subject based upon growing needs and based upon contributions and other things that are way beyond certainly our scope and control at certain points as well. So I do want to state that that's our, you know, ultimately what our plan is going to be, and that is subject upon a lot of different variables. As I sit here in October and we have this conversation, that things could certainly change very, very quickly on that end. But thank you very much. Moving right along, it is my pleasure to talk a little bit on the 2021 calendar updates. And this is very, very brief. I just want to make reference that in September 1st, 2021, we, of course, had to close due to some localized flooding with the remnants of Hurricane Ida. And that closed us during that particular day. And we did not transition to a flexible instruction day at that time. We had some movable parts. There were some power outages. We thought it was best at that point to just call it a school closure. And at that point, our first makeup day in accordance to the 21-22 calendar is March 18th. So what we're going to plan to do is still honor March 18th as a day, but we're going to make that a flexible instruction day. And we'll utilize that time to make up and prepare for that, utilizing our flexible instruction day. The flexible instruction day schedule is posted online. It is on our main page in our district, as well as every school's page has the flexible instruction day schedules built in. Our teachers have done a good job thus far of going over what that schedule looks like at the elementary and middle school, of what that schedule is going to look like for their students. High school looks a little different as well, and you could say it's a very truncated schedule, but time built in, which is very important for our teachers to have that direct instruction when appropriate and needed for their particular student. The second element I want to add to our calendar is with the holiday season among us, the localized travel is going to occur nationwide, of course, this being a very sought-after holiday season if it kind of replicates itself to that of Labor Day. So we'd like to, on December 23rd, 2021, allow all of our students and parents and guardians, staff, teachers, administrators, to get a jump start on the holiday travel safely and allow our hardworking students and staff to leave 2 hours early.
What day of the week's that?
Thursday. Thank you. Thursday. Yeah, I was not sure. Thank you. For that jump start to the holiday, and we wish everybody a safe travels during that time.
I say just as long as they know ahead of time.
That's what he's saying.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So our goal is to announce that today, and certainly make that then public thereafter. Thank you, absolutely.
Dr. Fox, just going forward, when you start the next calendar for what is it, 2022, 2023, I would recommend, I mean, it's just my opinion as one member of the board, but possibly put these ideas that you have, like the day before Labor Day, you know, these holidays that you want to do with the 2-hour delays. It's not something we've seen a lot of before, so my recommendation was any of these days, if you want to do it before Easter, Thanksgiving, wherever you think there should be a 2-hour delay, and then we can, you know, remove them as we want to, but I would put them in right away so that we remember about them.
Absolutely, and that calendar is going to start to get its, that draft stage relatively soon, like as in next month. So we'll begin to kick the tires on that and begin that process, so thank you.
I'm in favor of this. I think for me, the benefit of it is not so much the jumpstart on the holiday travel or the break for the hardworking students, as much as it gets them off of the road for all of those people that are traveling. I mean, I know, having been a state employee, that was part of the reason why the state would often close 2 hours early, was to get them through so all that big traffic chunk didn't happen all at 4 o'clock. So that maybe in marketing this, that's another piece of why we would be doing it, as opposed to just, you know, saying, yeah, it's just because a lot of people may not be traveling on the holiday, but they at least get home so that it's not, they're not in there in the buses and everything else in the mix of everybody leaving at the same time.
Great point, thank you.
Dr. Fox, since we're talking calendar, has there been any thought, last year you were not here, there was some discussion from parents about allowing our kids to enjoy a good old-fashioned snow day, if indeed we get like 24 inches of snow or something. I don't know if we've really thought about that. And so I'm just throwing it out for discussion among the admin team. If we don't have any days off and there's a prolonged period of time we're in their school, and then we have a snow day and maybe they just need a good old-fashioned snow day. It's maybe something you all should discuss administratively. And I think the other thing is, I think at some point it's important to inform our community what a flexible instruction day looks like. If indeed it's a snow day, but it's a FID day, are they expected to be in Zoom for 8 hours that day, or they Zoom in for 10 minutes and then whatever, I don't know. But I think a little bit of clarification on that before the weather starts getting worse or bad might be helpful.
I think you bring up great points on both. Absolutely, thank you. And we will have that conversation. And ironically, we have an admin team meeting tomorrow, so that will be agenda items number 11 and 12. So we'll go ahead and add those because I think they're great discussions. I do want to make it one point as well, as I believe previously we had a remote learning schedule and a flexible instruction day schedule. We only have a flexible instruction day schedule. So if we ever had to close for any other reason, besides weather, it would be and utilize our flexible instruction day schedule. So every day thereof is a flexible instruction day. So I want to put that clarification point so we don't have multiple schedules floating out.
Well, and I just want, since you're going to start working on the calendar, we have snow days. Like, we have snow days built into the calendar. We just, use some of them as flexible instruction, because I don't think anyone here, I don't know if anyone's ever been in a school where they've had to tack on the snow days at the end of the year and kids are sitting in a classroom for a week later. I mean, yeah, when you went to school, you had to go almost a whole month.
They used to have to walk 6 feet or 6 miles each way and barefoot.
No, he's not that old. He's not that old. He's not that old, but they had to go till mid-June. I graduated, so we got to graduate on time. But I don't ever want our schedule to look like that. I'm okay if we have some snow days built in there and we don't need to use them all as FID days and give kids snow days. But I do not like the idea of tacking days onto the end or taking out, like if we have Thanksgiving and now we have 1 day off for Thanksgiving instead of 3. I would rather use the FID days.
So
just one. No, I appreciate that. And as I'm thinking about this, I know last year there were times where I had one person in particular, I think their child was in kindergarten, they had work assigned, because they were working with the letter W. I don't know why I remember that, because I was like, don't worry about it, you don't use W very often anyway. But they were worked up about it because it had a deadline of like midnight that night, and both of those parents were working. And so they tried to do it the next day. It was a Saturday, and they couldn't get on because the deadline had closed, and they're trying to learn W with their kindergartner. And it was so, I just think we have to be aware, if we're putting deadlines on flexible instruction day things, the parents may not be able to work with their younger children especially. And I know those were all the learning things we learned with last year. I know we learned it, but we just got to remember those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly, I think the key to the word is flexible. And I also believe in age appropriate. To me, as you begin kind of that continuum, I would argue that certainly a 9th through 12th grader, and even I would add in the elements of 7th through 8th, there's that release of responsibility that also needs to be kind of placed back a little bit on a student as well, whereas we need learning partners, especially K to 6, and in particular our elementary school when we begin to look at our K to 2, K to 4 population especially. So yes, all of those are really learning reflections that we've learned a lot from, and we continue to make those adjustments as well, because just as good as we think we have something, we know we're going to need to make adjustments from that as well too. And we've discussed that and know we're going to need to kind of hit the reset button at certain points too.
So, as a follow-up before we move on. So follow-up to Mike's question, what is the time frame for FID days to be made up? No, when does it have to be done by? So if today is an FID day, when is it due? Yeah. That's the question that Mike just asked, and everyone made it seem like it was okay, but what happened last year was it had to be done by Saturday morning, and if you work all week, you don't have time to do it before Saturday morning.
Yeah, I can address that from the younger children perspective, because I think that's actually the hardest one, right? Because the younger kids need that adult help to learn the letter W. And I actually have a meeting with some of my teachers right now. I have a meeting scheduled tomorrow to talk about that exact issue, because sometimes the teachers feel that by giving them that Saturday, they're giving the parents more flexibility or something like. But in reality, we normally would not expect students to turn in assignments on a Saturday, ever. So that's a conversation I know we're having just in general right now, because I agree with you. I think there are sometimes technology is great, but sometimes it actually makes our lives a lot harder the way that it's put in place. And I think flexibility is that key.
And I think I miscommunicated. My point was the parents wanted to work with their child on Saturday, but they couldn't because the assignment closed at midnight on Friday night.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I would say normally if we had one school day off, that the assignments would be due the next day, depending on the nature of the assignment. They may have them start something that's not due for a week because it's a larger project and maybe an upper grade or something like that. But in general, it would be, if they had one day off, it would be due the next school day. So if we had off on a Friday, it would probably be due on Monday.
And I think
So
one of the
let's
things.
just say,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and this is why I think that doesn't work. Because if you are a parent who is responsible to go to work and do a job, and you have a 2-hour delay, so you're already going into work late, and now all of a sudden you have to find a place to take your kid for the day, you're not getting to work till 10 o'clock. So instead of getting off at 4 o'clock, you're getting off at 6 or 7 till you drive home in the snow. Then you're expecting them to work with a kindergarten at 8 o'clock at night to have it done for the next day. That's why I think that doesn't work, and you have to leave the Saturday open. And maybe you don't leave it as you have till Saturday to get it done, but you leave it for the people who can't get it done as an option, and don't shut it off the next day at 12 o'clock.
And it gets problematic too, because if they're going to grandma's, grandma might not have a hotspot, and she might not have internet connectivity.
Well-
So it's all those things. But to your point, I think if the teacher just said, had the parent write a note, we were not able to complete this, it will be done Monday, and that's fine, or just something
but-
like that.
Dr.
But I think the problem was that it was just being shut off.
Well,
You couldn't log in.
But we need to remember that these are FID days, not virtual days. I think we're mixing up virtual days because virtual days were shut off at midnight on Fridays. But Dr. Fox, can you research for that? Because I thought that when we approved these FID days a couple years ago, prior to pandemic, that it wasn't like an announcement, but the kids had like 2 weeks to make up the work. Because there are going to be kids that are home alone during these days, and they're going to need some, because we had even talked about like aides helping them make it up the following day and things like that. Like, it's not, I don't think that's realistic at all, that we would have a kindergartner home with a grandparent on one day and we're going to expect them to turn it in the next day, not for an FID day.
Sure, I think there's a couple things in play. I think number one, I think we have to, again, we're going to look at age-appropriate amount of levels of assignments also. When we're saying we're not trying, and there's not, it's an extension of the learning day and an extension of the lesson. For a flexible instruction day, due to weather and an unexpected closure, that's going to be a continuation and not necessarily new learning that's going to occur unless it's a preview of something that's going to be redone or probably re-solidified back in the classroom the next subsequent day. If it's a closure for other purposes, such as anything associated, of course, with anything else that could be 3 or days moving forward, what we will do is utilize that time to begin that instruction, but have, again, modified chunks and communicate what those timelines and expectations are. But I think these are all really good points because we all see it. I certainly live it with my own kids as well, too, as to what is that amount of time that is suitable to be able to work with each, especially if you have multiple kids, multiple assignments, and what does that look like in multiple grade levels. So all that is really good feedback. And again, I think you hit a home run when we said it's a matter of let's communicate also with the teacher. Let the teacher know what time you need to be able to submit that. Because the most important thing is the completion of that activity, not necessarily the timeliness of that activity. There's a meaning behind it. We're not giving something just to check a box. There's going to be an assignment that's associated with it that has meaning and the completion of that assignment.
We've just gone full circle. We're going back to authentic assessment again. We're not looking and saying, well, they're going to miss 40 minutes of class, so that's at least 6 worksheets. That's the absolute wrong thing we want them to do. What can we do as an authentic form of assessment when they're home to demonstrate that they're understanding the content I've taught? I mean, it's all about just the way we look at what we're doing.
Well, and the nice thing is, and if we're having these meetings, the same way that we're having them, if we're having meetings to kind of reevaluate all of these things because they're new and we're hopefully out of most of the pandemic, especially now that we're 1-to-1 K through 12 with the iPads, I wouldn't mind seeing, for like a reading project for someone in like 5th grade or something, well, here's how I made breakfast. And they take a picture of their breakfast with their iPad, and they write out, how they do it. But it should be flexible enough that if they are with a grandparent or if they are, having sketchy internet or something, that they could still do it, which is why I wanted the 1-to-1 iPads to begin with for these flexible instruction days. But I think that, we want to kind of make it flexible, but it cannot. I don't think, especially in your younger grades, that if you're off one day, it should be due the next day. I don't think that.
So just for a point of clarification again, so anytime the students are out of school, the term will be an FID day. If the Department of Health shuts us down, it'll still be called an FID, not a virtual learning day. They would follow that same schedule. There's going to be one schedule you're mentioning. Is that what you mentioned earlier?
That's correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think for consistency purposes.
Okay.
Yep.
And this is the first I've actually looked at the FID, to full disclosure, looked at the FID schedule. I like what is being done in the high school. And part of the reason I like that, I think Mr. Quigley and I had this discussion one time about the snow day thing, and not just the kids that are in kindergarten that want to go out and play, but the kid that wants to go and shovel his neighbor out, and they can do it because they were in class all day long sitting in front of the computer. This is nice because they're done by noon, right, with the classwork part. And then they can still go out and shovel their own driveway or whatever. You know what I mean? I think there's value to that too, right? In building good citizens and that kind of thing. So I do like the way that that's framed in terms of the day, at least for the high school. I didn't look at all the other schools because, of course, my kids are in high school and that was where my interest was. But I'm just saying, as I look back, I like that. I like that concept, so.
Thank you. And again, I think it's not measuring seat time, but measuring what's being done during that time. And I think when we look at it, it's the prioritizations, right? It's that idea of how are we and what is being explicitly taught. And really, when we look at explicit instruction, it shouldn't be more than 10 to 15 minutes anyway, in my opinion. And really, it probably should be less than 15 minutes because we know 8 minutes is about our attention span when it comes to understanding and demonstrating a new concept, and then allowing students that chance to demonstrate or to try that concept or to apply that concept during that course. And then again, having time, and that's open and available for students to be able to ask questions. And we know that sometimes, because of caretakers, because of childcare, that they may not be able to access and get online, and we're ready and available to support students as well during that time also. But thank you. This is good conversation, and I appreciate this.
We're not going to snow this winter anyway, but just in case.
I really hope we don't, but I don't know.
You know, you just guaranteed it. You know that, right? It's like
The
Well,
Farmer's Almanac, right?
So much, this was your briefest one, remember?
Well, thank you. And we're going to transition, and Mrs. Moore and I are going to now transition into talking a little bit about our ESSERS 3. And we did a presentation earlier this year and submitted our ESSERS 2 application. And this is our ESSERS 3 kind of plan at this particular point. And there's still some work we need to do on it. This is a plan that has several components to it as well. And ESSERS 3 is a one-time allotment of funds associated with the American Recovery Plan. And some elements to our ESSERS 3 plan that we have is one of the things that we had to do was post, and you approved early on, a health and safety plan. And that health and safety plan is online. And that health and safety plan, from when we approved it, I believe in July or June, has not changed. That plan is available, and it's online right now, that you can go to our website and see that plan labeled ARP ESSERS 3 Health and Safety Plan. It is recorded there. One of the things we're also continually doing and working on right now is analyzing groups of students that are most impacted during the pandemic. That's a requirement of this particular plan and module and part of e-grants for us to work into what groups of students may be disproportionately impacted during this time. We're also responsible to reserve 20% of our total funds for what's called learning loss. That's a word I don't necessarily care for because some students have been impacted differently than others. And I would say at this particular time, we're looking at using that 20% to be able to accelerate some students also, because acceleration is sometimes even more greater than remediation or tutoring at some particular point also. We have to engage in stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement is what we're doing right now as we begin and post this information and broadcast this information during the time. Solicit impact and feedback, as we're doing with our community coffees I've done in the summer, as well as engaging throughout the last 2 meetings, and we'll do so throughout the winter. We're going to support and continue to support our educational mission and vision. But I think an important component of that we want to hone on is we want this to be able to be sustainable and manageable. Those are 2 important terms because, again, this is a one-time allotment of funds, and it's not going to be here over and over again or returning investment, such as what's done for federal programs, Title I, II, III, and IV, although that is variable too and determine the amount of monies available from the federal government. So I'm going to turn it over now, and Nikki's going to talk a little bit about some of our plan and strategy to use of funds.
So this grant extends until 2024, so we are fortunate to be able to spread out some of these things over 3 budget years. Our thought process at this point, I know we've had this discussion. We want to make sure that 2 school counselors, their salary and benefits, are being applied to this grant. So we will be applying the salary and benefits for 3 years towards this grant. We will also be doing the same thing for intervention specialists, as well as our 2 district psychologists. We want to include the supplemental pay for directing our blended cyber program. That's going to extend for the 3 budget years as well as the software for PAE-TEP, which we just purchased this year. And we're looking at extending our frontline usage to extend to human resource management. And that would also, and that's a recruitment software, which we will also extend for 3 years as well. And ESSERS 2 is picking up our iPad lease from 20 through 2023, and then this grant will pick up the iPad lease from 23-24 school year.
Thank you, and I'll talk a little bit, are there any questions on that?
Yeah.
So these are not, I'm sorry, good.
Yeah, I guess my question is, because you were talking about sustainable and all, like, so what do we do? Where are we going to find the money for those salary and benefits that are, all of the salary and benefits that are up there after 3 years?
Yeah, Dr. Jones, that's a great question. This is currently in our budget. This will supplement or supplant portions of the budget. These are not new positions, but rather these are positions that will be taken out of the general operating budget.
I guess my point is, I think we need to have in the back of our mind, not even in the back of our mind, in writing, this year, if it weren't for this money, this is how much money we would need for the salary and benefits of the 2 counselors, for the salary and benefits of the intervention specialists, because that money is going to have to come from somewhere, you know, and salary and benefits don't go away. So that's my only concern with using these funds for that.
So essentially, when I prepare our budget for the past ESSERS and COVID grants and things like that that we've received, I have not budgeted these revenue sources in our budget, so we can see full picture what it would look like should we not be receiving this revenue. So that's kind of what our plan is going into the 22, 23, and further school year, to kind of give you a good picture of what it looks like, and then have those benefits come in when we get reimbursed for those expenditures.
And just, I think I'm just going to ask a question, because I think I understand this correctly. So you're moving this stuff to the ESSERS because this meets the criteria of ESSERS, these things. Then the money that would have been in our budget, we might be able to use these years for one-time purchases, not things that are sustainable, but like a one-time thing that wouldn't have normally fallen under ESSERS. And then after ESSERS is gone, this would slot back into our budget where it has always been as normal.
That's correct.
Okay.
Get that, Mike?
So, Nikki, how I understand it is you're going to keep it on the expense side.
Yes.
And the grant is just basically going to be another source of revenue that is going to come in on the revenue side.
Absolutely.
So these will never disappear from our expense side. So when we're tallying what our total expenses are, these will never be removed from the expenses.
Correct.
It will just be where the revenue is going to come in that's going to cover, and you're earmarking these expenses to be covered by that particular revenue.
Yep.
And I get that, but then eventually that revenue's not going to be there. These expenses are going to still be there. So other expenses, we'll just have to be aware. We got to cut X number of expenses out the following year after these 3 years,
But
because these are there.
But these are in our budget right now.
That is correct.
So the budget that we approved shows these dollar amounts without that money.
But we're not, I understand.
Yeah, this is, from what I understand, this is the application for ESSERS, right? This is what, right, so they're putting these things on that application because they meet the criteria of ESSERS. But it should, in theory, free up whatever this ESSERS amount is. It should free up $1 million, say, for whatever, for these positions that are always built into our budget. And that $1 million then, that's been freed up because you got it from here, for one-time purchases could be used in other ways for this time frame.
Or we could put it someplace and save it for
Yeah.
year number 4.
Yes, that's
so
right.
our
Not the
expectation-
ESSERS money can't be saved, but the money you've supplanted can be saved.
Yeah, our expectation was to use things that are in our budget currently to bring in those savings.
Right.
And moving ahead with the 20% set aside, the 20% set aside is an automatic. There's a calculation and formula set aside in e-grants that we put the amount of money in, and it tells us what the percent needs to be set aside. For the set aside, one of the plans we want to do is to take our iReady benchmark assessment that's being used at the elementary school and kind of also work that into our middle school. So we have a continuum of benchmark assessment data, as well as being able to use some of the tools that are also there within the iReady portal. And what it'll do is there's a dashboard that allows us to make quick instructional decisions based upon some of the resources that are available in iReady. And I put iReady, but again, that is subject to full discussion that we need to have as an admin team. That's a placeholder. So I really probably should have just put instructional program or benchmark assessment, because we need to have further and greater discussions as to which type of assessment platform works a little greater. The second is our supplemental summer pay for student services staff. So again, that will be our nurses readying and preparing and ensuring that our students who have healthcare plans are ready for the summer. Our school counselors who work to prepare for the needs of our students who are entering into college and career readiness, and also preparing for our students' schedules, preparing our students, academically, those students in those readiness summer programs, and supplies for summer instruction. We are looking at adding and providing and continuing to expand a little bit of our summer programs here for students. And these supplies will be added in the 20% set aside. So any supplies associated with that instruction, they can utilize as well. So our timeline currently, what we're preparing and presenting is tonight, we'll continue to have discussion. November, we'll look to submit that application through the Pennsylvania Department of Education's e-grants site. And we'll continue to move in our budget cycle and budget discussions. But again, this is a kind of a back and forth, what's submitted. Certainly there may be changes that I need to make or other tweaks, along the way based upon the feedback on this particular program. But it certainly is nice to have. It certainly is, a good way to be able to supplement, and a great way to be able to encourage and look at, again, when we look at that 20%, how can we support ongoing student instruction, student learning, and utilize certain assessment platforms to be able to get real-time information, to be able to make those instructional decisions, and use that instructional data within our grade level teams and within our departments to use that to kind of speak to the whole of what modifications do we need to make instructionally within our curriculum and within our unit plans in our individual lesson plans. Any questions on the overall very broad-based ESERS 3? Thank you. Moving right along, I'm going to just kind of highlight a little bit on our comprehensive planning program that we've done, and our comprehensive plan that is currently due right now. So, or we're working on right now. So we had our comprehensive plan. One of the things that is based upon the Future Ready Index. And the Future Ready Index, if you've ever been to it, you just kind of Google PA Future Ready, and it will take you to a very robust dashboard that you can take a look at any school district throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And really, it does a nice job of taking a look at all 3 schools within Susquenita School District and all schools throughout the Commonwealth. And you can drill down and see some really interesting data. That data hasn't been updated, I believe, since 2018, but it will be relatively soon. The comprehensive plan aligns with our Chapter 4 and our Chapter 4 requirements that are in the PA School Code. This used to be called it used to be called strategic planning, comprehensive planning, and now it's turned into the PA Future Ready Comprehensive Plan, because it keeps kind of growing in some of its scope and size, and it really specifically uses that dashboard as our main mechanism to be able to gain information and use that as the driving catalyst behind discussions. These are our planning team members, and we continue to expand and add members, and as we go into smaller ad hoc groups, we'll break out and utilize that a little bit more during those times and add different memberships and different members on. Our planning meeting timeline, so we just had our first meeting, inaugural meeting, and I'm pretty excited because I said I'm going to keep it to 50 minutes, and I actually did. That was one of the first times I've actually stayed on time. And even when I was teaching, I had difficulty with that, as you can imagine. So that was the first time I kind of stayed on my lesson and my lesson plan, so that was great. We're going to have our next meeting on October 14th, and that will be 50 minutes as well. And I will stay on time also during the course of that. So they are at 4 o'clock, and they are held here at the High School Media Center. We'll have another one in November, wrapping up around January of 2022. In February, I will demonstrate and showcase and share at caucus what the main plan looks like and some of our main goals and objectives, where that plan will then, I will seek your approval, and it will sit for 28 days before I go ahead and post that plan and submit it to the Pennsylvania Department of Education for their approval, review, and feedback. So some of the long-term goals of comprehensive planning, it will be, our goals will be established as a result of a needs assessment. So the state does provide some pretty handy tools and reference tools that can be used for us to really begin to unpack and use. Here we're going to look at the data again, and we'll unpack the essential practices guide. And overall, what we want this to be is a collaborative process. And my experiences with the Future Ready comprehensive planning is it's not so much about the document and the finished product, but about the collaboration and discussions. Those are more valuable than the finished product ever will be, because it's about engaging and having a conversation. And I think that's the key and critical component. It will be very broad-based because, again, the overall goals are broad-based because this is a district-based plan. And then down in the specific plans are at each building level, and then from the building level, kind of gets drilled down a little bit further into each department in actionable steps. And it should be very universal. So it shouldn't just be specific and honed upon one particular building. It should be able to be broad-based and be able to be used and universal to each of our three K through 12 continuum. The comprehensive plan, as we said, has several supporting plans that are embedded within it, including the induction plan. All new teachers that have not been went through a series of induction before in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania need to go through an induction program. We have an approved induction program, so we'll look at what tweaks need to be made to our induction plan and build those within this plan and framework. Professional development plan, that's one of the high, I get fired up over that one. That's a good one because that takes a look at what is our learning needs as a district and how do we begin to plan out what those learning needs are and utilize that output for that particular purpose. Gifted education plan as well. So I will be working in concert with Dr. Herman on our gifted education plan. Student services plan as well, and taking a look together in our special education plan, which will piggyback the work we'll be doing in our comprehensive plan, and that will be submitted along the same timeline and framework also. So that is comprehensive planning 101. Questions on the comprehensive plan?
All right, Dr. Fox, first of all, thank you. I don't know that this has happened in our district with Fidelity in quite some time, so I appreciate what you're doing. And I almost hate to ask this question because I don't know if it's a cart before the horse type of thing, but we as a board still need to come up with some board goals. And of course, this plan is creating goals. So I guess my question is, do you see the outcome of this plan eventually being goals that are brought to our board, that the board would then take these goals and encompass them in other board goals that we might want to do? Or do you see that happening separately? I know it's kind of a big question, but I know you exactly understand what I'm saying. So,
I absolutely understand what you're saying. I think that's a great question, and we always talk about this as a group, and I think it's fair to say we don't want things to operate in silos. So our broad-based goals that we have, and typically in a comprehensive plan, let's say there were two very broad-based goals, and those broad-based long-term goals should extend into our goals that we can build and foster too, which ultimately should extend into our mission and vision, and ultimately extend into the future of what we want to do, which which is work on that portrait of a graduate. That's still going to happen over time, that we are going to build and collaborate. And that's going to be a kind of our educational North Star that we'll move forward with. But these are broader and based, and I think from there we can get more specific and timely as to some of the goals that we will do. But yes, I see them kind of filtering together and linking together.
And I know we only have so much time, and you have been just committing massive quantities of time, even when we were paying you $1 a day before you were officially hired. But I would not be opposed, I don't know how the rest of the board, but I would throw this out, I would not be opposed to us having some type of a late fall, midwinter retreat of some sort where we would talk about some goal setting and, you know, and you tell us what you've learned with the new assistant superintendent and just, you know, helping to anchor things a little bit.
I certainly won't speak for everybody, but I would welcome that. I think it would be fun. Anytime we can get together and having those powerful conversations is always great. A supportive group, so absolutely, I think it would be a good kind of mid-year or kind of check.
I have not felt as excited about our district as I have in the 20 years I've been in the district, and I think we're all headed in the right direction, in the same direction. It would be nice to get it down on paper.
Absolutely. That is definitely news worth making. So congratulations to the Blackhawk girls soccer team on their accomplishments, and as we take one step closer into the playoffs, and exciting times. So thank you.
Mr. Quigley, is that a first? I thought so.
So let's go ahead and tomorrow night, make it a plan to be at the stadium at 7 o'clock. You can get into the game for only just before 7. Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Just before 7. So let's go ahead and say if you could come in around 6:45, come in and actually come a little earlier. The concession stand will be open. You know, enjoy and support. But it is senior night, and how awesome would it be to have that stadium packed and rocking to support our girls soccer program and to cheer on the Blackhawks as we gear up for the district playoffs. So thank you very much.
And I throw out a plug that it is also the Tri-Valley, or the small schools cross-country championship tomorrow night and senior night as well.
Well, that's
so you
perfect.
could come early and make it a night of it.
I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. So let's go ahead and prepare for that. Everybody who's listening, let's make it an evening of athletics and an evening to go out and support the Blackhawks, because you can easily, it's a nice commute down the hill a little bit to the stadium. So absolutely.
The concession will probably be better at the soccer game, though. I won't lie.
The last item is more just a discussion. I don't have anything to really present or share. Is at our September meeting, we discussed a response to not necessarily the masking order, but a response to the Pennsylvania Department of Education and a response to the Department of Health. A response because we believe uniformly that our local decision-making power was removed, and a response based upon the frustrations that we all had and the consternation that we all experienced based upon the communication or the lack thereof that was associated with this. As a response to that, there's two different items or ways that we can do that. The one is through a formal resolution. A resolution is more of a board collective action that will be voted upon and written that very much spells out our discontent with those two items. That will then be formalized, posted, sent to some media sites, as well as sent to the Department of Health and to the Department of Education. A second would be a letter that would be more formal, of a business type letter that would also summarize those. But a formal resolution would be one that would be more of a formalized response, or more of a formal response, I should say, than a formalized response. So at this point, I will take some feedback as to which of those two you would like that we could prepare for. Or any discussion to that, or?
I am good with the resolution.
I agree with the resolution.
That sounds great. So what I will do is formulate that, share that, and we'll get ready to discuss that and vote upon that in October 12th meeting at the board. Thank you. Are there any other questions with the board this evening? All right. Well, once again, thank you for coming out. Thank you to everybody who joined us virtually. Thanks to all of our administrators for being here. Oh, my fault at this point. Is there anybody for public comment?
Just really fast, this is just to say thank you, basically. I'm Kim Baker, and my daughter's in the high school, and she's in 10th grade. And I was coming to kind of voice for other parents and friends of ours of hoping that you will reconsider with all of the testing at the end of the year. But after listening, you sounds like you are also in agreement with that. So thank you. And I also wanted to say thank you for everything that you're doing. The kids are having an amazing year based in the situation that we're facing. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
If there are no other public comments at this time, I'm going to close our caucus meeting out and look forward to seeing everybody October 12th. Oh, actually, I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at 4